Good morning. I have quite a few people out there. I can already see that you're online. I'm talking to you from Cambridge in the UK. It is 11 o'clock. We're going to start the webinar very, very shortly. I'm just going to allow a few more people to arrive. Whilst we're doing that, you can see in front of you the title of today's webinar. This is very simply TOK for Parents. It's the first ever webinar we've done for parents rather than teachers, although I'm sure most of you are educators out there. I can't avoid you teachers, but I'm sure quite a lot of you are teachers rather than parents. But hopefully we do have a few people who don't work in schools and are perhaps a little confused as to what this course is that their children are forced to do during the DP, and hopefully we can demystify that today. As with all the lessons that I teach, be they to teachers or be they to students, this webinar has a learning objective. You can see it there. So by the end of this webinar, my intention is for you to be able to explain what the TOK course is, the role it plays in the diploma program, and why it gives my child an edge over other students doing other educational programs. Okay, so I think we'll start. It's just gone 11. I can see quite a few people out there. If you want to share with us where you're from, it's always good to know who's out there and where you're watching this. As I say, I'm coming to you from Cambridge, which for once is very sunny today. We've had hideous amounts of rain. And winter is definitely coming here in the UK. So today's webinar, we will, this is the structure of today's webinar. First of all, I'd just like to give you a welcome to what we're going to be doing. I'd like to outline the course. I'm going to talk about the edge that I think it gives to students studying it. I'd just like to give you a few examples of the kind of thinkers and the ideas that we look at in TOK. I want to talk about how practical the TOK course is. It's certainly not philosophy. It's something very different. It's very, very practical. It's very, very useful. So I'll be talking about that. I'd like to talk about where we're trying to take your children, the students, to. What's the sort of culmination of the TOK course. I'd like to give a few ideas of how parents can support their children as they explore the course, and just very, very briefly tell you how you can get in touch with us. So I'm just looking at a few messages coming in. So I've got someone watching us from Jakarta, 6 o'clock in the evening. That's pretty civilized. I've got someone in Japan, someone calling from the Netherlands, Abu Dhabi, a parent from Holland. So I'm very happy to see an actual parent and not just a teacher. Manila at 7 o'clock, someone who is French, and we are in the Netherlands. That's great. We've got a lot of different people around the world watching this. So a really, really warm welcome to the webinar. Philippines, Breda in the Netherlands. So this is popular with you guys in the Netherlands, which is great. Okay, so I am going to just introduce myself. I'm not going to assume that you know who I am. My name is Michael Dunn. About 10 years ago, I set up a website called theoryofknowledge.net, and it has very happily grown into something quite large. I think I'm correct in saying it's the largest online resource for theory of knowledge in the world, and it's used by a lot of schools around the globe. We provide a lot of free content for students and for educators, and we also offer a membership package to schools so they can draw on our teaching and learning resources. And I want to do this. I want to offer more help to parents. I'm a parent myself. My son is just about to start the DP. I'm very happy that he's chosen the DP rather than A-levels. Here in the UK. You have the choice, and actually it's quite unusual to be doing the DP, so I'm really chuffed that he has chosen to do the DP, and I think that's partly to do with all of the things that I've said about TOK. Hopefully he doesn't feel under too much pressure and he can actually make his own mind up, which I think is the point of TOK. But this is definitely one of the reasons why he's chosen to do the DP. This webinar will last approximately 45 minutes, but I do tend to ramble on, so it might go over that. I don't know. We'll see. I will be very, very happy to take questions and queries that you might have and receive feedback from you. If we have time, I can do that at the end of the webinar session. You can send me your questions via either Q&A, the Q&A function, or via the chat. But if you have any questions that you think about afterwards, then by all means, you can send an email. I will be sending out a what I call a debrief email after the webinar, which will it'll give you access to this video, obviously, also the presentation, and I will try and respond to the FAQs that come in from you. So you'll receive that. Hopefully by the end of today, maybe tomorrow, we'll see how long it takes to sort the video out. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. I won't be taking questions as we go along. So if you have any questions, sort of hang on to them until the end of the session. Okay, so first and probably most importantly, what is this course? What is TOK? I'll just move my head out of the way so you can see that heading at the top. So what is TOK? Theory of Knowledge. What is this course? What kind of role does it play in the diploma program that your children are doing? And why is it so important? So first of all, it's a mandatory course that should take around 100 hours of teaching. That includes the 2 assessment tasks. It is a course that is sometimes neglected, although I suspect that if you are watching this and you're a parent, then your school has probably told you about this, which means that they probably care about TOK. I've worked in quite a few different schools, and the way TOK is treated is, unfortunately, sometimes it's kind of sidelined, whereas in other schools, it is a central part of the educational experience. I personally think that it has never been more important, especially at the moment. I don't need to say, the events that are going on in the world at the moment that benefit from a kind of TOK lens for us to sort of make sense of things. But the thing it does is that second bullet point there, it asks students to consider where we get our knowledge from, how we produce ideas, understanding, and so forth, and what we do with that. And it looks at other aspects of the nature of knowledge, how ideas change over time and why that might be, how perspectives shape the way we look at the world. It has a very, very strong element of ethics in it. We're quite important, quite interested in the relationship between ideas and values, how knowledge is used in an ethical way or not, and what it takes to become an expert knower. Okay, so we look at all aspects of knowledge, and those are the kind of things that we think about. The TOK course, very good for me because I hate exams, is not assessed by an exam. So it's unlike all of the other DP courses. Instead, students write an essay which makes up 2/3 of the final mark for TOK, and an exhibition, which is, I suppose we can say it's a presentation. It has actually replaced the presentation which is in the old syllabus of the TOK course. The exhibition is an assessment task in which students choose 3 objects and they link it to a prompt, a sort of statement about knowledge, and they discuss those objects. They have kind of a personal connection to the students, and it allows them to talk about different aspects of knowing and again, how we produce ideas. So this is one of the most important aspects of the TOK course. It tries to bring together all of the aspects of the DP, all of the different subjects. So students are asking critical questions about their courses. Okay, so comparing, say, the objectivity of knowledge in mathematics with how we assess artistic knowledge. You might compare, how we gather data in geography and compare it to more experimental sciences such as physics and chemistry. So it's asking them to, it acts as a sort of hub to the DP. And it's a great way for knowledge to kind of flow between different subjects. I try as much as possible to give students ideas that they can discuss in their other subjects. And I try to get my teachers on board and get them discussing TOK. So we try and have this kind of mutual relationship when it comes to talking about knowledge and understanding the world. So that's what TOK is. It's a fantastic experience for me as an educator. I've taught a lot of subjects: history, film, politics, geography, and so on. But I have never been grabbed so much as I have been by TOK. It's a fantastic course to teach, so much fun. The students absolutely love it. And it just offers such great classroom experiences and serves a really, really important function, I think, in both their general education and the DP itself. So this is what the structure of the course looks like. This is a diagram that I created to try and help students to understand the sort of three different elements of the course. So you can see them for yourself. At the top, we have what we call the areas of knowledge. So these are 5 ways in which we categorize knowledge. I don't need to read them out. You can see them there for yourself. At the bottom, we have what we call the optional themes, which are kind of affiliations, things that affect us when we are judging the world, almost like our perspectives. So you can see politics and religion and how that relates to our affiliations, but also the language that we speak. Excuse me, whether or not we belong to an indigenous society or our distance from indigenous knowledge, and of course technology, which is again it's a new addition to the TOK course, which has changed this year, and obviously a very important part of the way in which we generate knowledge and try and make sense of the world. In the middle of the diagram, you can see kind of us, the knower. The core theme is called knowledge and the knower. So that is really the result of the areas of knowledge, the areas of knowledge and the optional themes, but it's kind of a two-way process, of course. So the diagram is intended to be interpreted in lots of different ways. So I give this to my students, and they try and offer alternative sort of visions of what the course is and what the relationship is between the different elements. But that is the course. Now, given that there is no exam, there's no kind of checklist of things that you have to know in TOK. Having said that, students are expected to have quite a good knowledge of all of the 5 areas of knowledge. They are expected to explore the core theme in quite a lot of detail, and they are expected to have a good understanding of at least 2 of the optional themes. Personally, when I teach TOK, I expect to cover everything at some point in the course. But probably go into more detail about, say, language and technology, which I think are perhaps the 2 most indispensable aspects of the optional themes. But I like to mention all of these. I previously lived in Peru, so indigenous societies was a fantastic thing to draw on. I think you can't really talk about knowledge without mentioning some aspect of our political affiliation, our religious affiliation, and how they shape the way that we make sense of the world. So that's the course. That's the kind of the official aspects of the course. The way I teach it, the way my site theoryofknowledge.net structures the course is into 6 big questions, and this kind of helps us to cover the whole of the areas of knowledge and the themes, the whole of the course. And these big questions are ones that can be answered by every single teacher in the school. And as I will say a little bit later on, they are questions that can be asked by any member of the epistemic community, any knower, any thinker. Okay, so obviously that includes parents. So this is how I organize my units. And a lot of schools around the world that are members of the site will follow this, will follow these 6 big questions, or perhaps have their own big questions. So this means that it enables anyone who wants to have an access point into the course. So you can be asking your children, which of the big questions are you working on at the moment? Fantastic. You're talking about spin. You're talking about the way in which knowledge is communicated. So this gives you a chance to have a discussion with your children about what the course is and what they are doing at any one point. So this is a good way of helping to enable TOK to be integrated within the DP program and allow anyone to take part in it. Okay, so another aspect of the TOK course, again, a new aspect for this year, for the new syllabus, which I think is a fantastic addition, and again, gives lots of people an access point, is what is called the 12 key concepts, the 12 key concepts of TOK. So these are words and ideas that have been identified by the IB as having particular significance when we produce knowledge, use knowledge, the way in which knowledge develops over time. And these are, quite powerful words, quite empowering terms, great for students to get hold of and use. They can use these words when they are writing their TOK exhibition, when they're creating their TOK essay. But of course, they can use them in any of the DP subjects. They can use them in their extended essay. They can use them in you know, other internal assessments for other parts of the DP. So they're really kind of potent words, and words that can be, again, used for discussion between, you know, you and your children, and obviously non-TOK teachers and their students. So let me just maybe delve into one or two of those TOK concepts. I'm quite keen on using quotes, excuse me, more to kind of stimulate a discussion rather than as a kind of final answer to a question. But here are some of the ways in which key thinkers have approached these key concepts, and you can see that they link to different aspects of the course. So David Hilbert talking about the way mathematics knows no races or geographic boundaries, which I think relates to the concept of culture. There's a fantastic Diné proverb there: be careful when speaking, you create the world around you with your words, which I think links language to the idea of responsibility. D.H. Lawrence, the English novelist, wrote about the function of art. The function of art is moral, which I think is a great way of starting a discussion about the arts and ethics with students. Truth: to know the history of science is to recognize the mortality of any claim to universal truth. This is a great starting point when we're looking at science, because I think a lot of people go into the idea of science thinking that it is certain, definite, true knowledge that never changes over time. And of course, the more you look at science, the more you realize that it develops a lot over time. It is constantly changing. And when you have that understanding of what science is, it helps you actually in the present crisis that we are facing, to realize that why there are so many disagreements over effective treatments towards COVID and so forth. And actually, that's not a bad thing. That is how science works, which I will come back to. Perspective: very important part of the TOK course, understanding different perspectives and how they shape the way we look at the world. There's Murakami's quote on language: if you want to talk about something new, you have to make up a new kind of language. A great discussion there about the relationship between what we know and the words we have to express that knowledge, which is a great debate. And Winston Churchill, one of the most famous things ever written about history: history is written by the victors, which is a very good quote, although it's one that we explore in a very critical way in the course that I've designed, because I think it's actually not always true. History is written by the victors. It certainly was by him. History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it, was another thing that he said, and he did, and he went ahead and wrote it. But it's not always the case that history is written by the victors. And actually, we soon learn that the writing of history actually becomes the struggle, which is fantastic. And this is where TOK takes you into these wonderful debates and discussions about how we know the world. So those are some of some great ideas on these 12 key concepts and how they link to the course. And this is the kind of thing that we will be, that we look at, that we discuss, that we explore, and the kind of thing that could easily find its way into a TOK essay or exhibition. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of an idea about what the TOK course is, why I think it's a great course, why I think it's a fantastic experience for students. I will go back to that again and again and again, because I am a total fanatic about TOK. But if we're being a little bit more pragmatic, perhaps, other reasons for doing it, there's a big reason for doing it, and it comes when your children apply for university, when they take the next step or try to take the next step beyond school. Universities love TOK. They love the IB in general, the DP, I should say, in general, the diploma program, but they love TOK. And actually, there are some great ways that students can draw on TOK to make their application to university stronger. I'm presently writing a load of references for students that I've just taught for university, referring to the work that they've done in TOK. The essays that they write are a great sort of central feature, or could be a central feature of their application, could feature in interviews at university. The ideas that they come across, the thinkers that they've been impressed by, the real life situations, the news stories, the events, the controversies that are going on in the world that they have discussed in TOK lessons. The fact that they don't just do an exam, they create these two sort of autonomous pieces of work is is a great piece of evidence that they can work on their own. So it's just a fantastic course for getting them into university. If they really embrace it, they can then talk about that in applications, both in person and on their application letters. Just to give you a couple of examples. I mean, you can go online. You can find so many wonderful things said about TOK from people at university. I know we're in Cambridge here. You can see that little picture there is about 5 minutes away from where I live. I know lots of people that work at Cambridge, and every time you talk to them about applications and the difference between DP students and A-level AP students, they are so complimentary about the DP and about TOK. They really do love this course. So Howard Gardner at Harvard says that the IB diploma helps students to think critically, synthesize knowledge, reflect on their own thought process, and get their feet wet in interdisciplinary thinking. And you can see that TOK is obviously at the center of that, thinking critically, synthesizing knowledge. That's the kind of thing that we do in TOK. The TES universities want students who can think in the abstract, and the IB's Theory of Knowledge course does that. Those are just 2 quotes that I've pulled. There are loads more online. You can see very, very quickly for yourself if you go online that universities genuinely love the DP and they love the TOK course. So that is, I think, a big reason to do it. I don't think it's the only reason. I don't even think it's the most important reason. I think the experience itself is the main reason, but it's definitely worth remembering that at the end of it, this thing will really, really help them get to where they want to go after the DP ends. So this is kind of related to universities, but I think also to the world beyond universities. There's been a lot of talk for quite a few years now from educational thinkers, from business leaders, from political leaders, or at least the more enlightened political leaders, that our education system really doesn't work very well. A name that I haven't mentioned in this presentation, I should have given you a link to it, but you can look him up for yourself, is the very wonderful Sir Ken Robinson, who sadly died a couple of weeks ago. One of the most inspiring educational thinkers you can ever hope to meet. And his TED Talk on why schools kill creativity, I think, is still the most watched ever TED Talk. So I will include a link to that in the debrief email. He is just the most inspiring person about education, and he makes you realize that the old-fashioned sort of exam system, memory test, the rows of classrooms that maybe our generation were used to sitting in, the emphasis on learning facts and memorizing things really doesn't work anymore. It's not a great way of educating people for the real world. So instead, this large group of people have identified 4 skills that they think are much more important than just knowing the dates of wars and leaders and things like that. These 4 C's are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, and they are the key skills to enable students to enter the world, the real world, in a successful way and achieve what they want to achieve and help to change the world. And you can see, I'm sure, pretty quickly, even without knowing perhaps much about TOK, that TOK is the course for helping them hone these different skills. Obviously, critical thinking, it's all about critical thinking, what we do with knowledge, how we produce knowledge, what is fake knowledge, what is true knowledge, if there is such a thing as truth. So critical thinking, absolutely at the heart of TOK. But communication, we teach our students in TOK to communicate often quite difficult ideas, quite complicated abstract concepts, and to not only understand them, but also use them in relation to the real world. So we are all about communication. That's what they have to do in the essay. That's what they have to do in the exhibition. That's what they do in every class. We are discussing, we are listening, we are hearing other people's ideas, and hopefully we are ready to change our own ideas in order to adapt to new ideas and bring on board ideas that might be better than our own, more effective than our own. So communication, also very, very important part of the TOK course. Collaboration. Now, by this, one slight Criticism of the TOK course, we used to do a presentation and you could do it in a group, which I thought was fantastic. The new TOK exhibition, for me, a slight disappointment that it's an individual piece of work. So they no longer have to do any work in a team. However, in my TOK classes, and I know in a lot of other TOK classes in schools around the world, you know, group work is essential to understanding the course. You know, we have to get students producing things in groups with their peers. You know, this is what they have to do in the real world. There's absolutely no point them just working on their own and generating their own grades. It's all about collaboration. It's all about working together. But I think for me as well, collaboration means listening to other ideas, accepting that there might be completely different approaches to understanding the world. There might be completely different perspectives. You know, we look at very, very different cultures in TOK. We look at indigenous societies who often have a very different approach to understanding the world and making sense of the world compared to our industrialized, larger scale societies. And they have radically different visions of the world. We look at people like Wade Davis, who talks about indigenous knowledge in such an incredible way. So collaboration means not just working with other people, but listening to other perspectives and points of views and accepting that there might be a completely different route towards understanding the world. So collaboration also key to TOK, and creativity. Now creativity in TOK, I think, takes the form of understanding how new ideas appear, understanding how knowledge changes over time, understanding the role of imagination, intuition, reason, in creating new knowledge about the world. You know, we look at that in the arts. How do we come up with new ideas about the arts? We look at it in science. You know, how has new science developed over time, etc. So, you know, creativity for me is that sort of that spark when it comes to knowledge, which is applied just as much in science as in the arts. You know, we have this idea that there is artistic inspiration. There is also scientific inspiration at the very beginning of the scientific method. So we also think a lot about creativity, and you know, as you may remember from our big questions, you know, one of our big questions is all about creativity, how a new idea is created about the world. So those four C's are very, very important to us in TOK, and I think there is no better course within the DP or in any educational program where we help to hone those skills, develop these skills that will make our children ready for the real world. And another reason why I'm personally very happy that my own son is going to do TOK within the DP program. So let's think a little bit more about the kind of thing we look at in TOK. Okay, so the kind of ideas and thinkers that we find interesting. I've mentioned TED Talks already in relation to Ken Robinson. Here are some other TED Talks that we use a lot. Now, you know, there are some obvious thinkers who we look at. Obviously, we think about philosophers such as Socrates and Plato. I draw on Kant. I look at Schopenhauer, John Stuart Mill. I will come back to him at the end. He's a personal hero of mine. We look at artists like Picasso and the way in which he shook up the art world. We look at writers like George Orwell, who could quite easily be the patron saint of TOK. So we look at a lot of people like that, you know, big thinkers, ones that, you know, household names, if you like. But we also look at thinkers who are working today. We look at thinkers who are perhaps a little more accessible for students. We look at thinkers. I mean, I watch a lot of TED Talks, and the ones that I'm interested in using are the ones that communicate their ideas in a particularly brilliant way, as well as having the good ideas. So here again, just a very small selection of some of the thinkers who I draw on in my lessons, and I know are used in other schools. Elif Shafak is a Turkish writer who's absolutely brilliant at communicating her ideas, an incredible person. And she talks about the role of the arts in breaking through the sometimes very different perspectives that we have. So I think she refers to it as kicking a hole through our consciousnesses, and you know, we break through and make connections with other people via the arts and via writing, which is a beautiful talk that she gives. Donald Hoffman. Now, I haven't really talked about this, but one other thing that I try to do in TOK, and I know a lot of people try and do it, I try to bust assumptions. Okay, the students come into TOK with a lot of assumptions about the world. They assume that they know things, and one of the biggest assumptions I try to bust is that the reality around us is reality. And we very quickly dispense with that idea. And we learn that we all construct reality in a slightly different way. We all see reality in quite a different way. We don't know how different it is because there's no way of measuring. But certainly we are not seeing the objective reality, if there is an objective reality out there. This is quite a big idea to take on board. So, we need help to make sense of that. And there is a fantastic neuroscientist, I suppose we'd call him, Donald Hoffman, who gives a great talk here about, well, the title of the talk here, do we see reality as it actually is? He not only answers that question, he gets that question out of the way very quickly. No, we do not see reality as it actually is. But helpfully, he explains why we don't see reality as it actually is. And he gives a fantastic metaphor for how we see reality, why we see reality in a different way to what it actually is. Okay, so that he's a brilliant communicator. He's got some brilliant ideas and very central to the beginning of the course for me, because it's a fantastic starting point for realizing, wow, what I thought was true really isn't true, and there's no better educational experience than that. Molly Crockett, a very entertaining talk on what she terms neurobunk, which is the idea that your original scientific experiment, your research, often gets completely warped when it is reported by the media. And she refers to work that she has done on chemicals that help us make moral decisions in the brain, which turned into a story about eating a cheese sandwich helps us become better people. And she explains that this was done in a very kind of logical way, but completely in the wrong way. And what she originally researched had nothing to do with cheese sandwiches or chocolate as well, she mentions. So she talks about how the media can be very, very misleading when it comes to scientific ideas. When we simplify ideas or try and sort of translate ideas, it often ends up completely invalid. So that's a brilliant talk to watch. We are very worried as parents that our children are becoming dumb. They are using their phones too much. They are using their screens too much. And there's nothing I like more than to sort of burst that kind of parental self-righteous bubble. And then that gets a lot of applause from the students. In this great talk, John McWhorter, he discusses how texting, far from dumbing us down, is actually giving us a completely new way of communicating our ideas. And he actually calls it miraculous. He thinks it's a brilliant new way of communication. So this is a great way of kind of reframing the debate. Is texting dumbing down language? No, because texting isn't language, or at least it's not language as we know it. It is a completely new way of communicating. And as soon as you see it like that, which is what TOK is all about, the truth, our understanding gets shifted completely. So that's a lovely talk. It's a really funny talk. He's a very, very engaging speaker. This is one of my favorites. Tai Salesi talks about this question. Students get this every time they go to university. When they go to university, the first question they get, so I kind of I prep my students for this. When you go to university, you'll be asked, where are you from? Where did you go to school? And if they've seen this talk and if they've really kind of processed the ideas, brilliant ideas that are in this talk, they will be able to answer. Hopefully they won't make enemies, but they'll be able to answer that question in a really sophisticated way. Where am I from? Don't ask where I'm from. Ask where I feel a local. And she gets into a lot of different issues in this talk. She talks a lot about the role of power in affecting the way we judge other people and communicate with other people. It's a fantastic talk, one of the best TED Talks that I've ever seen. So, those are a few examples of the kind of thinkers, the kind of ideas that we draw on in TOK. Engagement for me is the key. Things that are interesting, things that are going to resonate. So, I know all of these work really, really well with my students. And that's the beauty of TOK, because there's no exam at the end, because you don't have to study this person and this person. You can make it incredibly rich. You can make it incredibly fun, and you can make it relevant to the lives of students that you're teaching. Okay, so I've mentioned already that that TOK is not philosophy. I mean, although it does deal with a few abstract ideas, it is definitely not philosophy. It's not just about highfalutin thinking. I studied university. So I studied philosophy at university as part of my degree, and I personally was always very frustrated by the fact that you could justify almost any claim with a hypothetical example, and that seemed to me to be missing the point of the course of philosophy. If we can't use philosophy in the real world, why bother with it? Because you can make up any hypothetical example. So this is one of the things that I love about TOK. It has to be practical. We explore the ideas that we look at. We explore the claims that we make via real life situations. We use real life situations as the evidence, justification for the kind of claims that we make in TOK. In the essay, students are the key assessment rubric is that the essay should offer a clear and critical analysis of the title, which to me, means offering a good argument supported by a real life evidence. And in the exhibition, even more clearly aligned to this idea, the exhibition measures how successfully the work shows how TOK manifests itself in the real world. So this is a very practical course. It's not a weird course. It's not an esoteric course. It's not a course with no point to it. It has a very strong point. And it's all about, it's all about applying to the real world. And I think that's a great measure of any course. How can I use this? Why am I doing this? I encourage my students to ask that question. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why are you telling me this? I used to be like that when I was a student, got in all sorts of trouble because I wasn't doing TOK. But in TOK, you have to ask that question. Why are we doing this? Well, here's why. You can use that idea that I've just gone through with you in this situation. You can use that thinker who we've just spent a week or so studying to understand what's going on here. And so I think the TOK course in that respect is brilliant because it has a point. It has a clear point that students can get. So what do I mean by this? So here are a few examples. These are quite recent stories. I will come back to this point again at the end, but I publish a newsletter for schools. You can sign up to a free newsletter, or if your school is a member, then you can access the kind of expanded premium version of the newsletter. And I look at about 20 stories, or not about, exactly 20 stories every month, and try and ask questions about them and get students to explore them. So here are some of the stories that I've found recently. I've tried to avoid the obvious ones, although I think they do come up a little bit here. So Banksy, who you'll probably be familiar with, is a street artist. He did I thought, brilliant piece of work recently on the London Underground, on inside one of the tube trains. And it was making a statement about COVID. It was making a statement about cleanliness, and it got wiped off. It got wiped off by the cleaners. But we think that was kind of the point, that was almost part of the art, which leads us to ask some really big questions about art. What is art? What is street art? What makes art good? How can we judge art? Where does the art end and the sort of statement begin? Loads of questions that you can ask about art. So we use Banksy a lot. He's a fantastic person to draw on. I don't know whether you've begun watching this. I began watching The Crown yesterday. I'm a little bit addicted to it. I think it shows a brilliant sort of juxtaposition between humanity and institutions. I'm not quite sure what it says about the country in which I live, but it's interesting. I find it very interesting. And I'm even more interested, if it's possible, in the discussion about the Crown. And I've read loads and loads of articles critical of the accuracy of the Crown for various different reasons. Okay, so this comes from The Guardian, which is left-leaning, but I've also read reviews in The Telegraph, who are also critical, but for other completely different reasons, kind of related to their politics and their point on the social spectrum. But the Guardian's article was very critical and said, as you can see there, the Crown's fake history is as corrosive as fake news, which to me poses some really interesting questions. I mean, this is something that I find quite interesting. When we watch a film about the past. You know, I watched 1917 quite recently about the First World War. You know, obviously JFK is one of the most famous historical films which really played loose with the facts. But what sources should we use to understand the past? Is this history? This is what immediately occurred to me. But The Crown is not history. You know, it's just entertainment. But is it? I don't know. It really poses some interesting questions about how we try to access the past, access the truth about what has happened. What should we use? Because I actually think this is a good source, maybe psychologically speaking, but maybe not historically speaking. But then that makes you ask the question, well, what is the point of history? Why do we use it? What should we be studying in history? So I think that leads on to a lot of different questions and discussions. A recent CNN article about analyzing UN reports about national happiness. I mean, I've worked in Latin America for quite a few years, and I worked in Colombia during the time of a lot of trouble there, and I've never met a happier group of people in my life, and I don't think I've ever been as happy as I was in Colombia. It's a pretty amazing place to live. Yet it scores obviously very, very low marks on these kind of surveys that are generated via quantitative rather than qualitative data. So this links to the human sciences and how we understand the world, how we make judgments about other countries, how do we produce accurate knowledge, you know, what kind of questions are we asking? Can we ever actually assess which countries are happy? Is that the kind of question that we can generate? So another, I think, very interesting question to ask. You might be aware of all of the problems that are happening right now because exams are kind of going out of the window, which actually is great for us in TOK. They're following us, they're copying us. Exams are going down. And so they're coming up with algorithms to kind of to award the final grade in courses. This story is all about A-levels in the UK and how they used really bad algorithms to generate marks, which they ran into lots and lots of trouble. Loads of people complained. The marks were all changed. It was a complete disaster. But the question that I think interests us related to mathematics is about algorithms. You know, can we obtain objective knowledge from algorithms, or are they always flawed because they are programmed by human beings? Are they always going to be subjective according to who created them, or can we generate more certain knowledge? So very interesting question. Algorithms obviously playing a increasingly important role in society. They control just about everything. So I think a really important question to ask. Can't escape COVID. You know, we in the newsletter, I am publishing quite a lot of stories about COVID and how we use TOK to try to make sense of it. Here's, I think, a really good story about, I think I mentioned it earlier in the webinar, about how people moaning about science. You know, you told us that last week and now you're saying this week, and you've advised us on this and now you're changing your mind. Actually, as this article points out, that is because the science is working. We are having lots and lots of discussions. Science is quite a long process that we have to go through in order to arrive at conclusions. And we're having to sort of massively condense it right now. And that's not how science works. It doesn't deal in certainties. It doesn't deal in truth, really. It deals in a process. And once you understand that that's what science is, it really makes you understand the kind of crises that we're dealing with now and that we have dealt with before in a very different light. So those are a few of the kind of things that we look at to apply TOK in order to understand the world. Okay, so getting near to the end now. What are we hoping to produce? Where do we want to take TOK? What do we hope that our students will get out of TOK? Again, if you remember the 6 big questions, my final question, question number 6, is about what it takes to become an expert knower about the world. And I'm a huge fan of the British philosopher John Stuart Mill. I think he had some absolutely fantastic ideas about society, about morality. But most of all, most impressive to me is what he said about humility. He said humility is it's the most fundamental aspect of being a knower, about being a positive member of, as I've put it there, the epistemic community, the community of knowers. If we don't have humility, if we don't accept that we might be wrong, that we might have made a mistake, we'll never learn anything. We'll just hang on to our own ideas and beliefs. in a dogmatic kind of way, and we'll never accept that, you know, we could improve upon our knowledge of the world. And that really, in a nutshell, is where I hope my students end up. You know, I hope they gather a whole bunch of new ideas. I hope they gather, you know, meet a whole bunch of brilliant thinkers. Some of their thoughts, I'm sure, will remain completely constant throughout the course. Some will change over time, but I hope at the end, if nothing else, they sort of accept, they get to the point where they accept that, you know, there are other ideas out there, and they might have got it wrong. As it says there in the second bullet point, we have to avoid arrogance. You know, we can't assume that we are right and other people are wrong. We cannot refuse to listen to other ideas just because we dislike them. And, you know, naming no countries or political leaders, I think we could really do with that right now. You know, accepting that maybe we got it wrong, maybe we have lost something, and maybe we should listen to the other side. As it says there, if we're truly convinced of an idea, we should be willing to let it be vigorously challenged, instead of which we get very defensive. You know, here's my idea, right, well, I'm going to critically analyze that. No, you can't do that. The idea is there. It's true. It's absolutely irrefutable. You cannot argue with that. Well, I'd like to just examine it. No, you can't do that. You know, we don't want that. We want them to be confident of what they know, but allow their ideas to be challenged, and not get annoyed about it, not get unhappy about it. So there's a lovely little video, just a 5-minute video analyzing the ideas of John Stuart Mill, specifically on this idea of humility. And that's where I would love my students to end up with. I'd like them to end up with that idea, that they should be humble about what they know. They should be, you know, have confidence in what they know, but they should also be aware that there are other views out there, and you know, that they should be listening to those other views. This is, you know, again, communication as well. Okay, so that's I think where I would like to take my students, and where I try to take my students. Okay, so how can you help? Well, I mean, I hope I've sort of given a clear idea about how you can help. You can help, first of all, by being aware of the aims of TOK, what we're trying to do in TOK, the structure of the course, you know, the areas of knowledge, the themes, the knowledge and the know, the us center, if you like. You can discuss with your children what they are doing in TOK, what's being explored at any time. You know, what ideas are you looking at, what thinkers are you covering, which big question you want. You can access the TOK newsletter. I've given you a link there. I won't go to it now because actually I have done what I said I might do, and I've rambled on. We're overrunning already. But you can follow that link and see the last of the newsletters. You can see the 20 different stories that we look at, and the kind of thing that works for us in the TOK classroom. If the school that your children go has a membership with us, I have a specific resource for parents. You know, you get for each of the 6 big questions, you get a little kind of parents pack, I suppose you could call it, a little presentation, some questions that you can go through with your students, just an outline of what we are doing and how it fits into the rest of the course. You know, I don't want to make it too heavy. I just want to, you know, just give you a kind of foot up into TOK, and get you to discuss with your children what's going on, because, you know, I think this is the best way of accessing students' education. I know a lot of the other DP courses are quite heavy, they're quite hard to access, but I think TOK, because it's so fun, it's so relevant, it's so up to date, it's so interesting. I mean, I'm totally biased, so maybe I can't say that objectively, but I think it's just a fantastic, fun course that you can actually discuss with your kids. So you know, that's I think how you can support them. Obviously, when they come to write their essays and their exhibitions, you can support them with that, give them a few ideas, talk it through with them. The exhibition is designed to be delivered ultimately in a public way. They're not marked on that, but it's a kind of showcase, way of showcasing TOK in a school. So you can practice with them, you know, what they've done. You know, as educators, we are trying to empower people. I think we forget that sometimes. So, you know, this process of empowerment comes from showing their ideas in public, receiving positive statements about it. And I think, you know, that's a great way for you to help us do that. Get in touch. Okay, so my site is theoryofknowledge.net. If you go there, we've got a brand new site. It's lovely. It's beautiful. It's very easy to contact us on virtually every page. There's a contact form at the bottom of the page, so you can easily get in touch. Or you can write to us directly. Support@theoryofknowledge.net, or I'm Michael at theoryofknowledge.net. So write to us. Ask any questions. We'll be very, very happy to help you with anything that you want to know about TOK, and hopefully how you can get involved as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share now. I'll give you a little bit of time to maybe send some questions our way. I'll be very happy to respond to anything. It's 10 to 12, maybe just for 10 minutes. If you have any questions, I'll be very, very happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, if no one has any questions, you know, you can send them my way via email. I will respond to as many as I can. And I hope that, you know, I've given you a taster of what TOK is. I hope that I've demonstrated that it is a brilliant course. I genuinely think it's a brilliant course. I used to think history was the best part of the DP. I've moved on to TOK. I'm completely obsessed by it. Totally boring person. Don't ever meet me and talk to me, because I'll just talk about TOK. But if you have any questions now, I probably have a little bit of time to respond to them. But that's all I wanted to do. Just fill you with enthusiasm, hopefully, for the course, and just show how I think your kids are just so lucky to be doing TOK, and it's going to give them so many advantages. So someone has just said, which part makes most issues for students and parents? By that, I suppose you mean sort of which element of the course. I mean, it's totally up to you. I always say that as long as we're getting discussions going, it doesn't really matter what the discussions are. You know, most students have a favorite part of the course that they'll be willing to talk about, and they'll want to discuss with you. So, you know, allow them to sort of direct it. Now you have hopefully a little bit of knowledge about the course. You might be able to make links with other aspects of it and say, well, how does that compare to that other area of knowledge? Where does the themes come in order to explore that? I don't know. But, you know, let them lead it. Talk about what's going on in the world right now. You know, there were loads of real life situations, stories, events, etc., that I could have included on here that you can see from the newsletter. So, you know, anything works as a discussion. Do I have a TOK course for parents? Well, if your school, I mean, I have everything online. I have a course which are sort of 72 different lessons that schools use. Anyone can become a member of the site and access those lessons. If your school does have a membership, you can ask them to give you access. What I do when I teach TOK, everything goes on Google Classroom. Okay, so all of those 72 lessons are on Google Presentations. So you can access the classroom and you can see exactly what's being covered in TOK. And the TOK for parents is designed to send you out emails just saying, this is what we're doing at the moment, this is where we're going. And as I mentioned, a little presentation for you to get involved and sort of be aware of what we're doing in the course. So do I have a TOK course with parents? Well, I kind of do, but you'll have to talk to your school, or you can join me directly. It's up to you. But your school probably has a membership, and you can ask them to give you access to more of the resources. How is a presentation / essay actually marked or graded if there are no real right answers? From what I can understand now, it is about broad and critical thinking and is about what people know. How is bias eliminated from the marking system? You've asked probably the most important question in TOK, one that is discussed all the time. It's a brilliant question. Yeah, that's a really good question. I have obviously been a marker. I've worked as an examiner in TOK. And I have to say that we do sometimes disagree about what makes a good essay, a good exhibition. I will say this, though, there is a new syllabus and they have simplified the marking scheme. It's still not as clear as I personally would like to see it, but it is much better than it used to be. So, you know, there are certain things that you should be doing. You should be structuring your essay in a clear way. You should be linking it to at least 2 areas of knowledge. You should be justifying all of the claims that you make. You know, there are simple things that, you know, it's got to be 1,600 words. So there are practical things that, you know, you can tick off. But then there are qualities within the essay. The exhibition again does have a rubric. You know, you're writing a 950 word commentary. You've got to choose 3 objects. You've got to link it to one of the themes in the course. So again, there are things that are quite clear, but there is still room for interpretation, and examiners do disagree. But the team at the top of TOK is good, and they are pretty helpful in supporting you. So, you know, no, there aren't really right answers, but there, as I've sort of said, you know, that's the key to TOK. There aren't right answers, but there are right ways of presenting your arguments, or presenting your answers. So that's I can't give you a completely brilliant answer to that because it's such a big question, but there is a rubric and there are examiners working on this, and it is better now than it used to be. Someone has said, thank you very much. I'm a teacher and a parent. I'm excited for her. I'll read this because you can't see it. I am a teacher and a parent as well. 2 more years until my child will take TOK. I'm excited for her, but it is from myself, teacher's perspective. I do not know how I will respond as a parent later on. I mean, just, yeah, so how can you drum up more enthusiasm and interest? I mean, I would emphasize the idea that TOK is about what's going on in the world. It's going to help them. It's going to give them a lexicon of words and ideas and concepts. It's going to empower them. It's going to help them to make sense of the world. They will hate it at points. You know, when you first start TOK, you think, what on earth is this? Why am I being made to do this? But as you progress, you gradually become more and more used to it, and you're taking on board the ideas, the concepts, you know, there's 12 concepts, for example, and you're using them more, and you find that it gives you a mechanism for understanding the world better. You've got that sort of simple idea there that universities love it as well, which is a good way of selling it to people. So yeah, just emphasize that it's relevant, that it's practical, that it can be used in a real context. Right, yeah, someone's saying that thanks for that, and I want my husband to see it. Yeah, of course I will send out this presentation, so you know, very much this is designed to be watched in a recorded way, not just in a live way. Very interesting webinar. Thanks for all these comments. Very nice. This is such an important course. We parents should be aware with this TOK, especially after this course. Our children will be raising more questions and arguments. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, you're laughing about that, you know, because, you know, they'll be more troublesome, right? Yeah, but that's the point. I know I was very troublesome when I was at school. Maybe that's why I've ended up as a TOK teacher. Yeah, my criticism of schools is often that they don't take TOK as seriously as they should. One of the reasons for that is, which I didn't mention in the webinar, the mark for TOK is combined with the extended essay, and you only get 3 points out of the 45 in the DP, which at first sight makes it look like not as important as the other DP subjects. And we don't have as much time as the other DP subjects. So that's why it's sometimes sidelined. However, the kind of skills that we are dealing with in TOK allows the students, or should allow the students, to critically analyze their other subjects in a much more sophisticated way. And that often means the difference between a 6 and a 7, or a 5 and a 6, when they're writing exams, when they're creating their IAs. So you could actually say that, you know, TOK is worth 1.5, you know, half of those 3 points, but it's also worth probably 1 extra mark for each of their other 6 subjects, which means that it's worth 7 or 8 points. So even in that kind of way, I think it's a very important course. But you know, hopefully for all the reasons that I've said, you know, it's just a fantastic critical thinking course, much better than anything else available. It's fantastically interesting. It's a great way of introducing them and exposing them to the ideas of these massively important thinkers and ideas out there. So yeah, it's important in the DP, I think, much more important than those 3 points or those 1.5 points, but it's also important for preparation for life, for giving a genuinely great education. Another question coming in. No, I think we are about at the end. Thank you very much for all those questions. As I said, I can be contacted. Very happy to respond to questions. Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading another one, but it's not really a question. It's another thanks. I won't keep reading out those. Right, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be making this webinar available and I will send some responses to some of the questions that I get. If you want to send more questions, do email me. That is absolutely no problem. Check out the site if you want to find out more about TOK. As someone said, is there a TOK course? Well, have a look at the website. That probably gives you quite a good outline of the course as well. And check with your school if you have a membership, and you can access more of the actual lessons that I use to teach. So thank you very much for joining me. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you want to know anything else. Thank you so much.